Hello, 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 and welcome everyone to another edition of Entertainment 411. My name is Marvin Cairn. Every week we bring you the people who work in the entertainment industry. Our goal is to shine a spotlight on people both in front and behind the camera. And today on Entertainment 411, we have the privilege and the pleasure of welcoming two of the most beloved stars from one of television's most iconic series, Little House on the Prairie. Alison Arngrim made audiences laugh. She made them cringe. She made them cheer in an unforgettable turn as Nellie Oleson, one of TV's legendary villains. And since then, she's built a career as a performer, an author, an activist, touring her one-woman show around the world, including across Canada, where she has developed a very strong and loyal fan following. Dean Butler charmed audiences as Almanzo Wilder, the devoted husband of Laura Ingalls, and he was born here in Canada, in Edmonton, Alberta. Dean proudly carries his Canadian roots with him, and beyond acting, he's built a career as a producer, and we'll talk about that, as well as a storyteller, bringing projects to life behind the camera. So we are excited to share their stories from Walnut Grove. Folks, I hope you will join me in extending a warm welcome to Alison and Dean, who we now bring onto the show. Alison, Dean.
Hello. Hi, Marvin. Thanks for having us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for carving out some time for us. It's just so great to have you here. And you know, if you were to come up with a list of 50 or maybe even 25 of the most iconic and the most familiar and the most celebrated television series, Little House on the Prairie would, I think, wind up on a lot of people's lists. So the obvious first question is, how did you two become involved? I know, Dean, you came in a little later on the process, but just tell the audience how you came to become involved in the project.
Alison, why don't you start?
Well, yes, because I was there first. So I had been working since I was like 5, and I had a whole career from about age 5 to 11, did a movie, several commercials, TV shows. And then I wasn't working very much. And my father said, you know, that might be it. You might not work again till you're an adult. So I was sort of like washed up at 11. And people ask if I'm making a comeback. I said, Little House was the comeback. So when I was 12, I auditioned for Little House on the Prairie. And yes, crazily, I auditioned for both the parts of Laura and Mary, which obviously I'm wrong for. And then I came back to audition for Nellie Oleson. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And then as soon as I saw the sides, I was like, she's horrible. And I realized I was reading for the part of the villain. And my father was like, don't change it. You go and you read it just like that. And I read it, and Michael Landon was there, and the original producers, Ed Friendly, Kent McCrae. And they laughed so hard that after I left, the phone rang, and I had been hired basically on the spot.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Well, that is a great story. Dean, how did you come to be a part of the show?
So I came into this professionally later than Alison did. I was probably 19 or 20 when I started auditioning for commercials in San Francisco. I was going to college at the University of the Pacific up in Stockton, California. And I would travel from Stockton to do auditions for commercials, and I got my did my Taft-Hartley work on streets of San Francisco. And then, you know, a year or so later, I was hired to be the male lead in a CBS movie of the week called Forever, opposite Stephanie Zimbalist, based on the very popular Judy Blume novel. And that brought me to Los Angeles, and lots of auditions. And when I walked into the Little House audition, it just felt really right. I think actors get the parts they're supposed to get. And I mean, Alison clearly was supposed to get the part that she got. I just felt like, you know, when you read something and it's or just feels organically correct, you know, and the big instruction for me going in to meet with Michael was just don't act, just be yourself. Yeah. And that's really what Michael always wanted. I think, you know, in that casting process, for this part that I was coming in for, they just really needed someone to occur in a very sort of natural, real way. And I think that was the style of acting that was so predominant in Little House. And I think largely in television overall, people are playing pretty close to themselves because the material is coming at you so quickly. There isn't a lot of time to prepare for it. You just have to bring authentically yourself to the work that you're doing. So, it's really one of those lucky things, Marvin. You walk in the door and you're the right guy, and it ultimately worked out. I never would have imagined that, that 46 years later, I would still be connected to this. It just wasn't even, other than Michael saying people would be watching this for a long time, long after we're all gone, but you don't really process that. It felt a little like hyperbole. Now, 45, 46 years later, it's pretty extraordinary what Little House has done. And I think, your premise about being in the top 50 or 25, I'd say Little House is probably in the top 5 television programs of all time.
Well, how many billions of minutes were we streamed last year?
Last year on Peacock, 13.3 billion minutes last year on Peacock, 25,000 years of streaming in a single year. That's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for a year, 13.3 billion minutes. It's an extraordinary thing to have happen. And we just all feel so incredibly fortunate to be a part of something that has that kind of staying power with an audience. And multiple generations of an audience. It's not just one audience that founded in the 1970s. It's 25 years later, 25 years after that, audiences have continued to find this program and continue to fall in love with it. It has truly been the gift of a lifetime.
Yeah. And that's the technology. This will be forever. This stuff will be forever. Looking back, what do you think the show did in terms of how did it project, or what trajectory did it set your careers on, Alison?
Well, as I said, for me, crazily, it was the comeback at 12. But it launched me into a whole other level of TV work and fame that I just, hadn't even imagined. I'd always hope, I'd get a series, but then it turned out to not just be a series. Oh, it ran for a year, 7 years. And as a child performer, it was actually very interesting because kid actors, it's very difficult when we hit our teens.
Sure.
And we're not the cute little kid, and they can hire an 18-year-old to play 15 quite easily. So every child actor goes, please let me get a job that lasts through the awkward phase, 14, 15, 16. And I did. I got hired 12, and I was there till I was 19. And so many people my age went through the thing of, though they got a great gig at 12 and then it was all over at 14, 15. So I had this marvelous niche of where I was continuously on television every day during a crucial period. I've been tagged as the villain. I admit that clearly that I've been marked as that. I can't say I'm mad about that. All the roles that I've been able to do since and crazy villain parts I've been able to do in the stand-up has just been fantastic. And I don't think I'd be able to do the crazy stuff I do now but I can because I was Nellie Oleson.
Right. Dean, what like the first thing you did after Little House on the Prairie, like where did you go from there? Do you remember?
I think, as a series, it was a thing called The New Gidget, which was based on the Sally Field Gidget, the Frederick Kohner book Gidget. Interestingly, Gidget and Little House have a very similar kind of trajectory. I mean, they both deal with the life of a young woman.
Right.
They deal with the life of a young woman who is a trailblazer in their own way. Both of these women are iconic female characters. Later, I played the father of another iconic female character, Buffy, in Buffy the Vampire Slayer on Fox.
Right.
I've been so fortunate in so many ways to be able to be, to be the guy in the life of a special female character. And that's been a, you know, that was a nice niche for me as an actor. I was raised to be very respectful of women, to appreciate women. And I think, you know, I think as an actor, and I see on your title, Marvin, you do you teach acting?
I do, yeah,
Curious.
an acting coach.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I think actors, and you may have an opinion on this, but I think actors walk into a room to audition carrying their whole life on their shoulders, and everything is seen. And I mean, people don't know the specifics of who you are, but people make very fast decisions about who you are. And I've always said it's about 8 seconds. I mean, people know it that quickly. If it doesn't mean you're going to get the part, but they know in 8 seconds if you could get the part. And they also know in 8 seconds, there's no way you're getting this part. Either way, my take has been, get out of the room as fast as you can. Because if 8 seconds is good, you want to leave them with that good and not have a chance to mess it up. And if the 8 seconds is not so good, you just want them to forget about it and get out of the room as fast as you can.
He's right.
I very quick share. I'm an actor as well. This is 30 years ago. I'm in this room with Paul Gross, due south. He was also on the. He did Good Night and Good Luck a few weeks ago on CNN. Anyway, I'm in this room. I'm in this room. I'm sitting in this room with like these drop dead gorgeous guys, and the casting director. I get into the room, and she says almost within 8 seconds, "Oh, this is not working. This is not working at all." And she sent me out, and I went in to read for another part. There'd been a total So you're absolutely right. Absolutely right about that. Alison, this sort of folds very nicely into my next question. You know, the 8 seconds they've got a line on you. Your portrayal of Nellie Oleson has become iconic. And I'm just wondering,
no question.
I'm just wondering if there are any characteristics of the character that align with you, Alison, or did you really have to reach to play that character?
And he starts laughing, going, "That's totally her." We all have a Nellie Oleson living inside us. You know how I always say about our show, how people identify with, because everyone has a Mrs. Oleson at their job and everyone has a Nellie at their school, but we all have those days where we're just beyond frustrated and exasperated and done with everyone. And you just want to go, what? And it's tapping into that. And I just, you know, as a teenager on the show, imagine being 13 when you don't want anybody bossing you around telling you what to do, and being in Walnut Grove with, oh God, in the dirt and these poor people, and you're the rich family, but what good does it do you? Where there's nowhere to go. You can't go to the nightclub or anything. You really want to be in New York or something. You have dolls from Paris, France, but you're stuck in Walnut Grove, Minnesota, which is a cute place, but just, you know. So her frustration at that, and her mother spoiling her and telling her she's better than everyone, but this doesn't really help because now nobody wants anything to do with her.
It's mom's fault.
The rage that would build up, and just and you know, when I don't teach acting, but I have coached people for villain lessons. It's my only thing I do. Someone comes to me, says I have to read for this part. I don't think I can do it because it's a horrible person. I've never played anybody that mean before. No, come here. And I give villain coaching, and I talk about you have those days, or there's people you can't stand. Isn't there someone you've met who just really was terrible and really wronged you, and you'd like to pop them one? Okay, well, go there. And those days you've just been in traffic for 2 hours and all of the things, you just turn around and just want to go, what do you want? And we all have that. What if you let that out? What if you just let all that out? Just like blah. And everyone can identify. There's people who said, I don't know, Nellie might have been the most realistic character on the show, because if I was stuck in Walnut Grove in the 1800s, I'd have been mad.
and this, go, Gene. Go.
Well, I was just going to say, where Alison's concerned, I think that the audience always picked up on how much fun Alison was having. I think Alison really, truly enjoyed being the villain. This was not you liked her even as she was horrible to people. And I think there was just something in a little bit. I mean, look, there were definitely dark days. Okay. I mean, I get where she was really demonic, but but you always felt like she was in on the joke. And I don't know if the audience processes it that way, but as I watch her performances today, she's having such a good time.
And I was
you just see she's having a good time.
When I was a kid and saw Peter Pan, I thought, Cyril Richard,
Oh.
I was like, yeah, that's more like it. Yeah, I want to do that.
Captain Hook, yeah.
And so there was this kind of but it's like people could identify with Nellie too. Remember their scenes sometimes with her mom, especially with Nellie getting older. She was always yes, mother, and then as a teenager she'd be like, what, mother? And so everyone was sick of Mrs. Oleson by this time, and you could just go, oh man, to be her daughter. Yeah, okay, I get it. Yeah, I'd be mad too. And you're like, yes, Nellie, we understand. What? It's there. And I did enjoy it. And I did think about all the great villains I'd watched in movies and TV shows growing up. It just went, maybe a little of that. Mm-hmm.
Well, villains are always the most fun.
Oh my God, of course.
You go back to Shakespeare and and all these crazy villains. Dean, you joined the series. You weren't in off the top. You sort of came in, and I'm just wondering, what was that like? How did you? You're kind of coming into I've been on sets and stuff, and if you're in series, there's the regular cast, and so you've sort of got to make those adjustments. Tell us about that. How did you? Because you came in 4 seasons? Season
6. So I came in at the beginning of the second half, basically, what I did, and it was a very welcoming company. The show was a very substantial hit at the point that I joined it. It was NBC's top-rated series. It had been for a number of years. It was riding very high in the Nielsen ratings on a weekly basis. So this was a very confident group of people. The show had a leader in Michael Landon who was supremely confident about what he was doing in every aspect of what he was doing. There were no weak spots in Michael's game. He was all in all the time. And I think and I say that to say that when you're part of a thing that's really working, I think that everybody in that group is rooting for whoever comes into it to keep it going.
Yeah.
And they figure, you're there because Michael, who cast everybody, believes that you're the right guy for this. And, look, there are growing pains. There are, you don't know quite, you come into it not knowing quite what you're doing. But I think people I felt very welcomed always from the very beginning, and was given an opportunity to shine. And I just loved being around the whole apparatus of something that was as well done as this was. This was a really talented cast of people. It was a great crew. The show was a solid hit. It wasn't an industry darling by any stretch of the imagination. But the audience loved it. And so I just knew I was in a really, really good place. I had an agent at the time who told me before I ever got an audition for this, when I started working with her, she said, and she just was getting to know me, she just said, if Little House on the Prairie ever comes up as an option for you to do, you will do it. There wasn't even a question of like, well, maybe we'll say yes, maybe we'll say no. No, you will do this. And that always stuck with me, that she was really certain about it. And it has never let me down for a second.
Well, we were always happy to have a new person on the show. It's like, hey, a new person, maybe they'll be fun. New blood, fresh blood. Let's have them. And we're keen. Yeah, absolutely. We tried to be relatively welcoming.
I think everyone was really welcoming. Look, I took a certain amount of teasing. I mean, look, Alison and Melissa were sort of the bosses of the youth side of all of this. And, I got tested a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
But I think I always knew that, and not tested on camera. I got, you sort of get tested and teased a little bit off camera. But I had long since learned to be a good taker of a joke. And so, it's nice to be teased a little bit. And so it all felt good. There was never a negative in the teasing. It was fun.
We weren't too hard on you.
No, not too hard. No. And I survived. I'm here to tell the tale. It was survivable.
Now, I just want to dig a little deeper. Actually, 6 degrees of separation. I lived in Los Angeles myself. Yeah, before you two were born, 82 to 86, I was there. If you added up your ages and multiplied by 2.
I'm sorry, you said 1986?
82 to 86, I was there.
82 to 86. Well, we were right in the middle of it. I mean, we were in the last 2 years of the show, and then moving on to whatever came next.
And I was working out of the gym, and Michael Landon came in with his trainer, and I was on a machine, and he said, "Excuse me, Michael, he's very busy. Can you just slide it?" And of course, I let him and stuff. Can you tell us a little more?
Well, were you at Gold's Gym in Venice or something?
Where I think I lived in Palms. I think that's where I was.
So you would Palms. You would have been right freaking near MGM.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
From MGM, so he might have been meeting with a trainer right near the set. Yep.
Little Joe on Bonanza. I mean, he was like
he was an icon.
Little House on the Prairie was an icon. How just a little more, maybe Alison, we've heard a bit from Dean, but your experience of working with a guy who was really like a giant in the industry.
Yeah. It was so weird because I'd seen Bonanza, but I wasn't like a Little Joe fan, as some people were who came on the show. And oh my God, it's Little Joe. We love him. I knew who he was, but to me, he was, a producer, just being in Hollywood. I know that he loved to laugh, and I knew that day one because when I did my famous audition, he just was laughing that high-pitched giggle and just dying over my audition. And when they said, "Could you do it again, please?" I said, "Oh yes. What would you like me to change?" Little trained child actress, and he said, "Nothing. Just read the part about the house again." And it was my home speech, and he just laughed, and I think that's what it was because I'd found the humor in this character, and he was like, yes, that's what he wanted, because he wanted there to be humor in the show, not just to be Little House on the Prairie and we are pioneers and everything is sad. He wanted it to be funny and full of life and all these things. He was an extremely unusual person. You had, on the one hand, doing this totally family-oriented show and just giving the people what they want and the perfect paw. And then you have in reality, this was a person who was divorced twice and married 3 times and drove a Ferrari and wore gold chains. And you saw him at the gym who liked to pump up and who colored his hair. And he was a Hollywood person. He would go to the Playboy Jazz Festival at the Hollywood Bowl in the summer and do normal Hollywood things. But he wanted this show so much. He wanted to do it. NBC didn't want him to do it. They wanted him to do something. He wanted to do Little House on the Prairie. He knew it was the right thing to do. He knew that it was perfect. The women who'd grown up reading the books and then fell in love with Little Joe. Now they were having children. And he absolutely figured that out, that this was the place to be. And he wanted this in his life. He had a very, very troubled, terrible childhood and problems with his parents who fought with each other and him. And he wanted that childhood. He wished, everyone at home said, I wish Charles and Caroline could have been my parents. So did Michael Landon. Michael Landon wished that he had that childhood that we saw in Little House on the Prairie. And he was getting the same thing out of that show that the viewers were.
And when I was down there, I got there, and 5 weeks after I got to Los Angeles, I was one of the first episodes of Knight Rider, and David Hasselhoff couldn't have been more welcoming. He was so sweet. He, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. What are you doing here? They're not going to, why don't you go to my trailer and, to help yourself to anything in the fridge? How was Michael Landon, or was he more like he was wearing so many hats? Did he have to keep him a little more aloof and stuff, or was he paternal and friendly and
so clear?
He was very welcoming to people.
It was clear that he's producer, but he had the same dressing room as everyone and would often share it with Victor French, but he was his friend.
No, I think Michael had a very. I mean, look. Michael was wearing all these hats. He certainly was at the top of he was number one on the call sheet. He was certainly the highest paid individual on the program with all the different jobs he was doing. But I think when you were doing the work, he had a very egalitarian approach to doing this. He expected you script, come to the set, know your words, stand up and deliver. And there was not a lot of hand holding. He didn't shoot a lot of film.
Oh,
He
wow.
was, he shot exactly what he needed to shoot to cut the show the way he saw it in his head. He did not leave a lot to the editor to make choices. The editor could cut the show basically one way. I mean, frame here, frame there, sure. But the structure of the show was shot in the camera. And he gave it to the editor that way. And I think that was, the show really truly was his vision visually, and it was his vision tonally. Now, I think his tone, the tone that he adopted or that he had for the show, was very similar to the tone in the Little House books. There was a lot of commonality. What Michael brought to the series that the books didn't necessarily have is this very high level of emotion that was in the show. The books are emotional, but they're quietly emotional. Michael's emotional life was epic emotional life. And I think that the audience was able to just be drawn into, it wasn't a stoical place. Walnut Grove was not a stoical place. The emotions that people were living were right on the surface. The shows were written wide open. There were no secrets from the audience. The audience knew everything. It was, the characters didn't necessarily know everything, but the audience knew everything. And so the audience was able to track what was going on and see the choices the characters were making and make their decisions about who they wanted to be in this story. I'm sure there were people who watched the show who wanted to be Nellie Oleson, wishing they could be Nellie Oleson. But in terms of how you're going to live your life, I think Nellie was a wonderful object lesson in how not to live, but so much fun getting that lesson.
Indeed.
Wow.
Yeah. I think I digressed on your question.
No, not at all.
It wasn't the answer to your question at all, I don't think.
No.
Michael was writing most of the really rotten things I did were things that were written in scripts by Michael because he was writing the show. He wrote about half the shows, and then he even if somebody else wrote it, he had a writer's room where he'd go.
Well, he rewrote everything.
Tinker.
He rewrote. His final polish was what was in the script.
He would add subplots. So he's writing the show, directing the show, producing the show. So he's doing everything. So all of these terrible things I did were usually things that Michael had come up with and was often directing. So as I try to explain to people, it's like, I'm terrible, but it's Michael who was standing there saying, hit her again. This
absolutely.
His personality as well.
Absolutely.
I hope I'm not telling tales out of class here, but I think before we came on air, you were talking about how you guys spoke earlier on today. You guys bonded and remained friends. How about other people on the show? Are you still in touch, or how does that work?
Oh, God, yes. Yeah, we do. Yeah. No, I think, Alison would agree, I'm sure. I mean, look, I always say Alison is the welcome wagon in the Little House cast. Alison invites everybody to be a part of this in terms of the people who are really present out in front, driving this interaction with people who love the program. Allison's sort of been at the head of that line she has been at the head of that line for a long time and really does it well. And I think I totally embrace that thinking. And, so I've really joined in with Alison to be part of this, to create this environment around the program that people can continue to relate to. People come and see us, and our goal is always to have people feel like with the people that they watched are the people that are right in front of them. There's no big difference. You're not seeing, people don't walk away from seeing us and say, oh, that person was so different than they were on television. They know exactly who we were when they meet us.
My father used to say, you do not disappoint. We don't disappoint. When our fans met us,
we don't disappoint.
All the people coming out of these events, because we're constantly these events, and we're planning a lot of them now. But all the people come out of it and go, oh, that was wonderful. I met the person I saw on TV, and they were like that. I felt they were like the person I knew. I felt, except me, they'll go, oh, she was much nicer than I thought. But,
yes, they say you're much nicer than you are on television. but you can scowl at them if they ask for it.
But people will ask for, can we do a nice picture? Can we do a mean picture? Can we do one where I'm kind of strangling you? And I'm like, we can make that happen for you. Yes.
The show, the feel of it was very much, the pioneer, rugged life and stuff. Did you have to do any kind of what kind of an adjustment did you? I mean, I guess you guys are both kind of urban and stuff. How did you find that fabric in your performance?
It was hard for me, except for I can't ride a horse to save my life. So luckily, brilliant stunt women handled that part. Then it kind of worked for me because Nellie was city.
Absolutely.
And her mother was always going, well, in Paris, and in New York, and my dress is from Paris. It worked that I was fish out of water. What am I doing? Ew, there's horses, and why am I in the 1800s? I was sort of like why am I out in the country? That I was a city person being transplanted there. So that kind of worked for the chemistry of how Nellie related to other people. That I'm not from here, so that worked. But it did become believable because we went on location so much. And then even our day-to-day location, Simi Valley, once you got on that lot, I mean, we had no cell phones then, but there was nothing. Like the radio in the dressing room didn't work. There was nothing. There was no connection to the outside world. You had to drive, what is it? Right. You had to drive down to that house. What's about a quarter mile to get to a phone?
Yeah. Oh, more than that. Yeah, more than that.
We had a fire department guy with a walkie-talkie. That was it if there was trouble. But we were cut off. And the toilet in your dressing room and the essentially it was a 1970s version of an outhouse. It was plastic and it was an outhouse. It's not flush toilets. You're in the middle of nowhere. And wearing the clothes all day in the heat and in the weather and everything. You really got transported to that time. You did not feel like you were in 1974 at all for 9 hours straight.
Wow. Yeah.
Dean? Interestingly, so Alison is a city girl. She grew up in Los Angeles. Her family has more. She can tell you about her father, certainly his more rural upbringing. But I did have a nice hybrid life. I grew up in the suburbs of San Francisco. But during the summers, the summers were spent when I was a little boy into my teens at a family ranch in the South Bay of San Francisco that had been in our family since 1885. Wow. And when I was there in the early years, there was no running hot water. There was no electricity. It was coal oil lamps. It was, we rode horses and swam in a pool that had been carved out of the ground with horses and plows and plaster and chicken wire held it all together. We ate around a big round table. We all did the dishes at night. We did our chores in the morning, sweeping and washing windows and trips to the laundromat to do laundry because there was, there just wasn't any way to do any of that there. I think that without realizing it, I think I carried all that into the room with me. And I think because of that, I was Alison said she didn't ride horses. Well, I've been riding horses my whole life. I'd never driven a buckboard before or a wagon, but okay, that's fine. I got past that. Horses were wonderfully trained, but the atmosphere that we were in was very comfortable to me. So there was I felt like I was completely at home in the dust and the dirt and the stickers and all the beautiful live oak trees at Big Sky where we shot. That was all just like the world that I had grown up in. So it was very, very easy to step into that for me.
When you mentioned my dad's rural background, my father would watch Little House and go, I did this, I did that too. I didn't need to watch this. I was there. My father was born and raised in Mozart, Saskatchewan.
Oh my gosh.
Which is, Mozart's pretty far out there. That's middle of nowhere. So yeah, in the height of the Depression. So he did it all. He harvested crops and milk cows and yeah.
And didn't your dad also say after he read the script, he said, this won't last for 6 months? Didn't he say that?
6 months. Who would watch this? And but he also said when he left home as a teenager, if I never see another cow again, it'll be too soon. So yes, he was not a fan of the rural farm life and avoided it as much as he could after he grew up.
And was your father a manager? Was that your father?
Yeah, he left the farm out in Mozart and went to Vancouver, became an actor, wound up in New York on Broadway, and then wound up in LA working for Seymour Heller and managing Liberace.
Oh my gosh.
And so, yeah, what
What did your
a
dad
show.
do on Broadway?
He was in Tamberlane with Guthrie, Guthrie from like the Guthrie Theater, that guy, Tyrone Guthrie. And who was he with? He was with Albert Finney in Luther.
Oh my gosh.
Luther.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was like on Broadway. Okay, I mean, he was, I don't know, the third monk or whatever. You know, he understood.
Yeah, but he was there. He was there. He got there. I mean, good for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you, I'm sure you met Liberace on a number of occasions.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Well, Liberace features quite prominently in my stand-up show because, indeed, my parents would take me to see Liberace as a child because you really want to take the 8-year-old to see Liberace. And they literally said to me, now be on your best behavior. Don't say anything because no one must know that Liberace is gay. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm 8. I know he's gay. And I just thought Liberace was the most hilarious person. He was brilliant. He's like gay Elvis. He sold out every show. He really knew what he was doing. But as a child,
very talented guy, yeah.
So we're all gonna really pretend that this guy. Okay, is this what this is the story we're all going with? And the fact that
were all of his jokes about his mother and doing. I mean, was he?
Which was true.
Yeah.
He was so close to his mom.
He wasn't hiding anything.
Right. It was and the fans knew. And that was the thing I found. The women knew because they loved him, but there was also this attitude of, oh, yes, you would be safe with him. They knew. But they did. If you said, is Liberace gay? They'd have said no. But if you said, are you going to marry Liberace? They'd go, they knew. They completely knew. They just said, Liberace he was in his own thing, in his own space.
His own world, occupied
his own special world that was neither here nor there.
Very special talent.
Talent. Interesting that your father was born in Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
Dean, now I hope I've got my notes right.
No, so you said Edmonton. Yeah. I was actually born in Prince George, BC.
Prince George. Okay.
So farther north. Much farther north. I was there for the first 5 months of my life, and then my father was in the U.S. Air Force during the Cold War, where there was a lot of positioning of U.S. military assets north of in Canada to protect against the Soviet Union coming over the pole and attacking the lower 48. And so I was born there and was there for about 5 months. I've never been back to Prince George. It's not that I wouldn't go back to Prince George. It's just the opportunity has never presented itself. And so I have no active memories of my own. I've seen pictures of myself there as an infant, but that's it. That's it. Now, I did do a show. I did a play in Edmonton years ago. Who's the wonderful... the farcer playwright. It was it's very much a dinner theater kind of a show. Run for Your Wife.
Oh yeah.
Cooney was it?
Yeah. Ray Cooney.
Yes.
Ray Cooney.
Yeah. Exactly. Very funny stuff. I mean, really funny. And I spent 10 weeks in Edmonton and loved it. I mean, the sun never went down in Edmonton in the summer. I mean, for about 3 hours a day, something like that.
I did dinner theater in Edmonton. I, of course, crazy person that I am, got the November to January slot.
Oh, God, where it was dark. 18 hours more.
Completely dark and freezing, but it was awesome. It was a French bedroom farce. I had a blast. But now you see the phone is going to ring, and it's going to be Prince George. They're going to say, okay, you've never been here since you were 5 months old. We're doing a little house event here, and you're coming. That's going to be we're getting it invited. Sure. And we're going to have a Prairie reunion. We're going to bring everybody in.
Well, will you come too?
Hell yeah, because I'm
okay.
I'm dual citizenship, and my mother was from Vancouver, British Columbia.
Oh my
Mom
God.
was Vancouver, and Dad was a sketcher. And her family, her dad was a doctor, and they had money. She was kind of Nellie Oleson, and he was kind of Albert Ingalls. That's basically my family structure right there. So.
Oh my God!
Oh wow!
Funny.
So I was going to ask you, but I don't think there's any point now. Really, I thought you'd spent a little more time in Canada, so the Canadian the Canadian culture, such as it is, has had no impact.
Well, I really have no time. I loved the actors who were all Canadians that I worked with in Edmonton. What I loved about being in Edmonton is I felt like there was a there was a graciousness, there was a politeness, there was a, it was just a really nice group of people that were there. And so that was an easy experience to step into. And that part of it, I really, really enjoyed. And some people were so talented. I mean, my God, they were so good.
Do you remember any of the people that you worked with? Any names? I wonder. I know them anyway.
Wes Tritter.
Western guy.
So he was a wonderful older act. He may not be still with us. He was quite a bit older. One of the funniest people I've ever been honest anywhere with. This guy was just an absolute riot. But I really can't think of any other names.
How long ago when were you doing?
It was like a 10-week run. Something between rehearsals and
what year?
Rehearsals.
How long?
Let's see. I want to say it was sort of the mid to late 90s.
Oh wow. Okay, so
I think in that range. Yeah, I had a great time.
There's Jamie Hill from Edmonton. Hello and welcome, Jamie.
Hi, Jamie.
I'm going to come back to Dean for this question as well, but I know that Alison, you through your show, you've been around Canada with your show. Do you notice any? Can you put your finger on any stark differences between Canadian audiences and American audiences?
Yeah, I mean, there is because I am more Canadian culture, both my parents being massively Canadian and having, moved here as adults. And I've been to Canada many times, all the different parts. And there's sometimes, depending on the part of Canada, from a sort of unless you're from Montreal, then it's not there, but a sort of a reticence. It's some of the politeness thing that sometimes they will appear to be not as enthusiastic or say loud or raucous as an American audience, as the Canadian reticence. But once you get them going, I know I did a gala for the Vancouver Men's Chorus, and we had a high old time and didn't have any trouble there. But Dean is very Canadian. He says he's not Canadian, but being truly Canadian, I say he's very Canadian. He's terribly polite. He's excruciatingly polite, and he even says,
"Excruciatingly polite."
You're so polite.
It's like it's painfully polite.
You are so polite. You're Canadian, and you actually will say, "I'm sorry." You go, "Oh, I'm sorry." You don't say "I'm sorry" quite as much as a Canadian, but close. So you would fit in. You would fit in 100%. Any town in Canada would be like, "Oh yeah, you're from up the road." They would.
There you go.
So
there you go.
Yeah. And Dean, we're gonna take a little commercial break here, but before we do, Dean, have you noticed? Can you put your finger on any differences, perhaps, between the kind of audiences you face in the States and what you encounter up here in Canada?
I'm going to say it's probably, in some ways, it's maybe a little more. I'm going to say it off the top, maybe a little more sophisticated audience in some way, in terms of its. People going to the theater, people who go to the theater are pretty bright anyway. Look, I just think people were very kind. I think there's a little maybe more sophistication and subtlety in the humor. You have to think a little bit more about the humor. I think American humor is pretty in your face.
Yeah.
And I don't think Canadian humor or other humor is quite like that. You have to think about it a little bit.
Yeah.
And it was just really fun, actually.
Well, okay. I want when we come back, I have Canadian name drop. I have two.
Okay.
Let's leave the audience hanging, and we'll just. It's a very short break, maybe a minute. But if people want to get up and stretch, and you do as well, and we will come back in about a minute. And thanks
Wow, Marvin, you are talking to actors. I mean, you really are talking to actors.
Yeah, yes, I've been doing coaching for it's 30 years now here in Canada and overseas in London, England. So next
good for
class
you.
September 20th, and I'm looking forward to that. And I thank eBoss for the little blurb there. I thought that was Brad Pitt for a second there, and I thought, wait a minute, that's me. That's my. Anyway, folks, a couple of questions about the industry. Because like everything else in the world, politically, socially, economically, things are like just changing. How do you folks see the industry changing, and how would you like to see it change? So I guess it's a two-part question, and I'll let Alison start off. You got a name drop. Who are you going to name drop?
Canadian name drop. When I was in Edmonton in dinner theater doing In One Bed and Out the Other, yes, a French bedroom farce. Co-star was Christopher Gaze, founder of Barton Beach in Vancouver, and I'm great friends with Christopher Gaze. Haven't seen him in ages, but yes, became good friend Christopher Gaze of Barton Beach. He's hilarious, fabulous person. And he was like my boyfriend in the show. The other name drop is my parents, my crazy Canadian, ran the Totem Theatre in Vancouver in like the late 40s, early 50s. And one of their big stars, he wasn't TV famous yet, but he now is, was Bruno Gerussi. Yes, Bruno Gerussi.
So bless
a member of Totem, along with Michael Onkeen's mother, Muriel Onkeen. And yes, my father produced Streetcar Named Desire with Bruno Gerussi, yes, as Stanley, and Michael Onkeen's mom as Blanche Dubois.
Holy man. All right. So nice name drop there. Dean, do you want to drop your names?
I have no name drop. I have no name drop to do.
You mentioned that wonderful actor who was so funny in Edmonton. So that's your.
Yes, Wes Tritter is that name. And I thought he was just fabulous.
All right. Well.
The industry has changed. I mean, we're so old. I feel like when I talk about how we did the show, we had the Panavision, the 35 millimeter, and the cameras, and how we shot things and the edit, how long it took to shoot. I feel like I'm Mary Pickford talking about the silent age. Nothing is like that now. I mean, the fact that everything is digital now is just all of the things like, the lights, and no, we don't do that anymore. We don't do the makeup is different later. So the physicality of actually shooting is just like it's another world because they're just not doing what we did, which is great because it's a drastic improvement.
I think I was going to say just the audition process is so different. What is that? Interestingly, here in the United States, all the cost of auditioning to be in something has been shifted from the production company to the actor.
Yeah,
it really has become a pay-to-play situation as much as anything, because you have to be willing to invest in yourself to just even get access to the audition.
Yeah. So
it's a very different world now, and obviously contracts have changed. All that there's a lot of difference. Just the way that projects are distributed and delivered is very different now than it used to be. Actors can do a lot more. They can do a lot more. I mean, if you are in that list of actors, that 200 or 300 actors that really dominate the industry and always have, you can do a lot of different work today. Because
the openness is better. There's an accessibility. You see movie stars doing TV now, which nobody was allowed. So you see a crossover. You see things happening in streaming in these channels that would have been in the theater, and I'm like, okay, that's probably good. We're now getting money for streaming. The SAG had the stuff.
We are
getting the money for streaming, which we were not. And this is like, thank you, yes, please, thank you. That was a biggie. But yeah, everything's with the audition process. And, directors and producers, they don't all like this audition process either. It's the studios, because I went to this symposium and they were doing a whole Q&A, and a couple of directors said, look, I'd rather have everybody in the room because I can find out, like, no, they won't pay for me to have a room at the studio to run the auditions. They won't pay for me to rent a room. I mean, I'm a small filmmaker. No one's going to pay for me to do it. Then the studio says, we're not going to pay for any auditions. You have to. She says, I don't know if that was that video I got his first take or his 300th take.
Yeah.
I have no clue. And she said sometimes, and I've forgotten people on the set where it was a problem. And she said, the worst one though is because I don't have you in the room. I don't know if I like it. I don't know if there's someone I want to work with. She said,
Right.
get a tape. It's brilliant. And now I'm stuck in, New Zealand for 3 months with a horrible person who I wouldn't go to coffee with.
Yeah.
And then what do I do? So the people who actually are doing the work said, no, we don't like this system. We would rather have you in the room. But the people who are paying for it, yep, they've shifted the burden to us.
Yeah.
But it's because it's become now actor centric for that. Then it's allowed us. I mean, the number of actors who are producing their own stuff. And I mean, Dean, look what we're doing on the internet. We've did our own podcast with Pamela Bob and York. We're doing this. We're now talking about events for Little House. I mean, we're doing practically everything ourselves now because what else are you going to do?
Yeah. And we can. The door is open to that. And it's sort of really required at this point. You really have to step in for yourself.
Yeah. Well, from time immemorial, I mean, the studios had the keys to the kingdom and the cat, and now people are shooting stuff on their cell phones, which are their iPads, and becoming, and the material is becoming, huge hits and stuff. So, and so that's where we are. Any ideas? Anybody want to look into
about where we're going?
Where do you think we're going?
We'd like to go.
I'm going to just toss something out here. I mean, and I think there's a lot of debate on this, and there are obviously huge numbers of issues. But I think we are speeding towards a time where actors are going to become digital,
right? Completely
digital. Yeah. Now, maybe there will be that person, that star, but it wouldn't surprise me to reach a stage where in the background of shots, there's nobody real there. It could be completely digital created people. When you look at what AI is able to create now, what software is able to create, it's pretty astonishing. And if you're looking at it from a distance, you wouldn't know what's there, frankly. I think that's possible. And of course, it's been projected for a long time that we can reach the stage where an actor, and I always use Jimmy Stewart as the example because I just love Jimmy Stewart, that you could sample all of Jimmy Stewart's work and create a brand new performance for Jimmy Stewart.
Fake Jimmy Stewart, just a new, and that's why Lee SAG in one part of the negotiations was rights to image and saying, we know you're planning to do this and we know you've started doing it and done it in small amounts. No, the actors still own that. If you take everything from them and say, we're going to make the AI cartoon robot version of you, you're going to be paying the actor whose face you slapped on there. We have to have some kind of arrangement. You can't just do this without. They were coming up with contracts that included in the contract, we have the right to your image to create AI from after this movie in perpetuity. And SAG said, no. You have to get people's permission every time if you're going to create AI. If that's a separate contract, you have to have an agreement. You can't just say, I now own your image. That's not a thing.
I mean, I think the reality, Marvin, though, is that we all know that some version of that future is coming. We just don't know how soon it's coming, but it's coming. Yeah. I mean, I just think it's unavoidable. You cannot put that back in the bottle. You can't put that toothpaste back in the tube. I mean, it's out, and that technology is there, and it's getting better every day, every minute. It's getting better. So I think it's going to. I don't know if there's always going to be I hope there's always an audience for human performance because there's magic and nuance in that. The humanity of that is very important. I mean, the movies that touch our hearts, that really touch our hearts, are going to be best driven by human beings who are having genuine, real reactions that people can see and feel. Who knows what's possible in action movies where it's sort of in the Marvel universe, you don't know who's behind the mask anyway, really. I mean, all kinds of things could happen in that world. And I'm sure are happening in that world that the audience really isn't aware of yet.
Yeah, I find it a little troubling and disconcerting. I mean, I was a high school teacher for the Toronto District School Board for a number of years, and English is being removed from the curriculum, and I think there's I think scientists are going to find there's a causal connection.
With basic language arts,
in place of what? In place of what? French or what? I mean, what's being replaced?
Well, instead of going into an English class and looking at a novel or a play by Shakespeare or Arthur Miller or whatever, kids are being shown like newspaper articles. Or stuff online, a 500 word opinion piece, and then if it's on the Taj Mahal, when was the Taj Mahal built? Who built it? And it's all of that.
But that's like civics and history. That's a nice thing, but yeah, that's not what we usually teach. We teach literature and actual reading of stuff. So that's
have a good
world.
A good friend teacher who is hauled over the coals by parents who just railed at the principal for having the audacity to have To Kill a Mockingbird on the curriculum because of the language. And there just doesn't seem to be an understanding.
What are you, America?
Here in Canada.
I'm going to say, what are you being the States? I mean, we've had issues with different communities banning all just unbelievable choices of books. No, I don't object to this, I object to that. And they're like just the most tame literature that people have read for years. So, but you don't think of Canada as doing that. Wow.
Unfortunately, yeah, it's happening. And again, just to bring it back to what kicked off this whole part of the conversation is, I think the arts, they humanize us. They, and
yes, they do.
That's why I agree with you, Dean, that even the most sophisticated IA version of Jimmy Stewart is not going to resonate.
It's not Jimmy Stewart, right?
It's not going to resonate the way that holiday movie that runs on NBC every year. I'm having a senior moment.
A Wonderful Life.
Yeah,
I mean that's become a holiday classic. No question.
It's not going to be the same.
I agree.
We're all going to have to do theater again. We'll just have to go back to do live theater. It'll be the only place we get to
where you can see a human being on the stage.
Right?
That's really a fascinating, interesting thought.
Yeah, maybe. Folks, another core question. And I wonder if I know the answer, at least for Alison, on this one. Mentors. Either they can be like people who are in your actual life, or maybe they were just, maybe it's Jimmy Stewart for you, Dean.
Sure.
But folks who had an influence on your career and or your life. Is there anybody that I'm thinking maybe your father might have been one of them for you?
Well, yeah, but my father indeed, but my whole family. It's weird because I was raised around so many of like the old stars because my family were in show business, and I just knew like all the damnedest people as a kid. Liberace, he was a great role model. I mean, he sold out every show. And there were people I met. I mean, I was friends with Carol Channing. I mean, that's when I go through the list of celebrities I've known, it's funny because, throwing out Rich Little, for instance, a fellow Canadian. Very famous in America as a person there. Uh-huh. I was sitting at his breakfast table because we were helping him do an internet version of his show during the pandemic. And we started talking about famous people we worked with and knew. And obviously, Rich Little is quite a bit older than everybody. We were talking about all the same people, and we were laughing because it sounded like I was in my 80s because it was the people that I'd hung out with who'd been an influence on me. I can't figure out which would be a single mentor because I had so many people who popped up in my life. When I think about doing a film when I was 10 years old with Dina Merrill.
Oh, wow.
And what a fabulous role model she was, an amazing person. Of course, crazy Catherine McGregor and being around her. Mad if he was. You learn a lot from that lady. And all of the people, Michael Landon. I always joke about my, Michael Landon work ethic. And these are the things you pick up. I was influenced by just like several dozen stars of the Gilded Age who were in my childhood and life.
Dean, anybody come to mind for you?
Well, so I think of a high school drama teacher named Charles Harris that was at Piedmont High School in Piedmont, California, that was so supportive of my energy or my appetite for this. I think that when you're a young person, we need people who can embrace our appetite, our yearning, our energy. For me, it was so much about being seen and heard. and I think that's not an uncommon thread for people, that we all want to find a place where we belong.
Yeah.
And this teacher was very good at encouraging that freedom to step in and be seen and heard. Later, oh my God, I felt like I had acting classes watching people work through the Little House years. Obviously, Michael occurred so brilliantly on camera. There was just this, he had this ease in front of the camera that was incredible. Dabbs Greer, who was our Reverend Alden, really had a remarkable career and just had this innate sweetness about what he did in front of the camera, and you believed him. I think in the Little House world, you came to know that people, at least in our world, people were who they seemed to be. And that was, I don't know that I appreciated it enough then, because you're so, trying to do your work and worried about it and wanting to do a good job. But when you look at this years later, you realize that these people that we watched, that we were working with, were comfortable in their own skin, and they brought that thing that made them them. And that, for an actor, really, I'm sure you tell your students this, really the only thing we have to work with is us.
Yeah.
So to the degree that we're working with our acting partners, but what we bring has to come from something that's real inside of us. And so to watch people who operated in this real world, this truthful world with themselves, sometimes magnified, embellished slightly, but there's a core in it that is something that's real for them. And you could see that in the work that people were doing. So, I feel grateful. My God, when I worked on Broadway and Into the Woods and working with those people,
yes, you sing.
I do a little singing.
Oh, wow.
I played Tony in West Side Story and a tour in Japan. That was a big bite to take. I'd never sung 8 shows a week, much less that particular score. Into the Woods was a much simpler thing vocally to do, but to be surrounded by those people in that original Broadway company was an extraordinary acting lesson every night. I've never been around that kind of talent that lived on that level, that operated at that level of sort of human life force. It was really strong. Great people.
Wow. Just a note to the audience. I've got a couple more questions that I want to throw at these two wonderful folks. But if anybody out there has a question that they'd like to pose, you'd certainly be more than welcome to do so. Dean, we're going to bring it back full circle here. Tell us a little bit about your book, Prairie Man, My Little House Life and
Beyond. Yeah. So, back in 2022, a few years ago, it became suddenly the fact that we were going to be celebrating our 50th anniversary came into sharp focus.
Wow.
And I started thinking about this book question, and Alison had written a book, and Melissa had written a book, and Charlotte Stewart had written a book, and Karen Grassley was writing a book. That was a long gestation period for her. Some of the younger, Melissa Sue Anderson had written a book. Kenny Lester ended up writing a book. And these women in our program had written books, and they were all different life experiences, but none of the men who had been on camera in the show had written a book. And I thought, if there's ever a time as we approach 50 years, this is it. This is the time. There's synergy around the program now, building into this. This was the time. And I did a proposal, and my friend Mary McDonough, who played Erin Walton on The Waltons, walked it into her editor at Kensington Publishing in New York. And they called me the next day and made an offer, and
Wow.
I was off and running. And so I started in January of 2023, and the book was on bookshelves in June of 2024. And I'm working on a second one now that will be out in the fall of 2026.
Oh, wow.
And didn't I bug you to do it? Didn't I on an airplane go, you have to do this, you have to do this. There's no man, there's nobody.
Yeah, I mean, it's so daunting. You think, what do I have to say that can add something to this? And look, you don't know if you're adding to anything, but you realize when you start drilling down on your life that you do have things to say about things. And, the challenge is to say what you're going to say. I mean, my first draft was 220,000 words. My the published draft was 85 or 90,000 words. I mean, a lot went away. More than half of what I wrote went away, which is a good thing. And so thank goodness for editors is what I can say. Is people look at something. I mean, I'm a big believer in editors. I spent 10 years I've been producing for longer than that, but I spent 10 years in editing rooms with wonderful editors crafting conversations for NBC Golf Channel. And editing is so important, and you're trying to just chip away to get to the essence of what someone is saying. And you're trying to do it as entertainingly as possible. And anybody who says they don't need an editor doesn't know what an editor can do and how an editor can help you if it's the right editor. And so I'm a huge believer in that process. All of these things that we've done, Alison's written a book. I think she had Alison, you had a process with people helping you.
I wrote a billion words, and it had to be good. And my editor's like, okay, how about these 4 chapters become one? Because it's like you've written the Encyclopedia Britannica. And that's, and the editor, it's they can help you, the eyes and ears of the audience. And so you have someone to play stuff off of and go, oh, that works. Okay, what do we need to change? Yeah.
It's a nice segue. Alison, 2 things I want to ask you before we wrap up. First of all, I want to ask you about that book. And so let's address that first, and then the last question for you. But tell us about your book.
So, Confessions of a Prairie Bitch: How I Survived Nellie Oleson.
That's a great title.
Love being hated. Best people. Did they give you a hard time about the title? I said no. They said best damn title anybody's brought in all week. Are you kidding? They loved it. And HarperCollins, they're so funny. They said, we are the mothership, because they literally published the Little House books. And they said, we really want the Nellie book. We want to be the ones with the Nellie book. So they were very happy. I was happy. We're all thrilled. It was so much fun, because I'd always said I would write a book, but I said I won't do it unless I can just put in everything. And I did. I threw in everything and the kitchen sink. I managed to, and they said if you can, how to make it 1/3, we get 1/3 before Little House, a third Little House, a third after Little House, kind of made it all happen. And it makes sense. And you kind of get the sense, or I certainly did writing it, that yes, it was like my destiny. Who else could I have been but Nellie Oleson? You read it in my childhood, you go, yeah, what else would you do with yourself but become Nellie Oleson after that? And the embracing of it and the craziness of having this audience response where people say things like the woman who came up to me at an autograph show and didn't ask for an autograph or say hello or good morning, just looked at me totally enraged and said, I forgive you, and walked out. This kind of response. How do you react to that? How do you reconcile your life and your whole being with people being like that? And I did. I kind of went, well, I must have done something right.
That's the reconciliation is you scored.
It's the greatest review of all time. And And I kind of went with it. And here I am now. I've incorporated all the things in my life, the bad things, the terrible things, the sad things, the crazy. I went, well, what can we do? I guess we'll put that there. And I put it all together and made this. And it seems to have worked out.
Speaking of happy, sad, when I was in LA, I think it was 1983, I auditioned, didn't get cast, but I auditioned for The Normal Heart, which was a play dealing with AIDS and stuff. And I know you do a lot of work, volunteer work in that area. And just before we wrap things up, just tell us a little bit about that, what you do, why that is your volunteer, where you channel your volunteer energies. Just again, chat about that.
It's the Prairie again, because, Steve Tracy, who played the brilliant Percival Dalton on Little House on the Prairie, died of AIDS in 1986. he went public with his diagnosis at a time when people weren't doing that. It was like, 85, early 86. Rock Hudson had just died. There was no
Yes,
Magic Johnson yet. So people were still very freaked out. And he went and said, hi, you know me from TV, and I'm someone living with AIDS. And it put me in a weird position because, as I said, people were just panic stricken back then. And my phone began to ring, and people were like, oh no, do you have it? It's like, well, we didn't exchange bodily fluids on the prairie. Thank you. And it was so strange, but I realized that so many people were freaked out about this. What if I did have the information when they called? What if I did know the answers? So that's when I signed up at AIDS Project Los Angeles and took the hotline training, which was quite rigorous training. It's weeks and weeks of training, and you have to take a 5-page exam before you can answer the phone.
Oh.
And I did this. And so then not only was I able to volunteer and help all these people, but when people called and said, oh my God, can I get it this weekend? And what's going to happen? I could answer them. I'd say, well, this is how the virus actually works. And here's how you can help your friends. And here's what's really going on. And I was able to speak at places all over the country. And I was able to speak at places, said, no, we can't book someone to come speak about AIDS. It's too scary. It's the lady who was Nellie Oleson from Little House on the Prairie. Oh, we'll have her then. And so I got in places other people weren't getting in with that education.
It's just so great to have that, to open that door with that history and that role. Alison and Dean, thank you so much for joining us today. Your stories about Little House on the Prairie remind us why the show continues to resonate with audiences around the world, including here in Canada. From Alison's humor and fearless advocacy, which we
yes,
to Dean's creative work as both an actor and a producer. We didn't actually touch on that, though. I know you do a lot of work behind the camera, Dean. It's clear your contributions, the billions of, was it minutes or that you were talking
13.3 billion minutes. I love that.
Clear that your contribution with Little House on the Prairie continues to resonate and inspire new generations. On behalf of all talent and fans, we're so grateful for your time, your insights, for your sharing with us tonight, and for keeping the spirit of Walnut Grove alive for fans everywhere. Thank you both for being with us here tonight. We really, really appreciate it. My name is Marvin Karen. Thanks for watching for Entertainment 411. Have a good night.
Awesome.
Thank you.
That's great.